With its seemingly long list of benefits, which includes boosting mood, alleviating pain, promoting healthy sleep and healthy digestion, improving skin conditions, and so many more, it's no wonder people are turning to essential oils to support their health and well-being. The popularity of these wonder-working oils is stirring interest in learning how to extract them for personal use or for business. Welcome to Extraction Essentials, where you'll learn and discover how to create a formula using quality engineered products. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, this podcast is all about the process of extraction tools and the equipment that surrounds the extraction lab or facility. Create an income while enjoying the many benefits and uses of essential oils by tuning in to Extraction Essentials.
Welcome back to another episode of Extraction Essentials. I'm your host, Tony Frischknecht. I'm so happy to have you guys here today. Guys, if this is the first time you're listening to the show, please hit the subscribe button for the podcast or YouTube channel. It just alerts you guys when we have new stuff coming up. It also allows you guys, us as creators, to give you more content. The more we're able to get out to people, the more you guys are going to be able to see. So please do that for us. Now let's get to the show. Today I'm excited because we're changing gears a little bit from our normal educational platform that we have. We're going to do an interview type format today. And I'm very excited to talk to our next guest. He's extremely knowledgeable about extraction. And today I have John MacKay with you, actually Dr. John MacKay. He is an internationally recognized scientific expert in analytical testing, extraction, and purification techniques within the botanical space. His career has included many roles in innovative product development. Dr. MacKay is currently a contributor journalist of Extraction Magazine and Terpenes and Testing Magazine, a publication serving industry and science on horticulture, extraction, and testing labs. Dr. MacKay earned his BA in chemistry from St. Lawrence University and his PhD from the University of Vermont in inorganic chemistry focused on the synthesis of cancer-fighting compounds. Please welcome John MacKay to the show. Dr. John MacKay, how are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you guys. It's never a dull moment, so we have no idea which way we're going to trail in the bunny hole, but we'll see where it goes.
Exactly. Well, for some of the listeners out there, I know you've got an extensive background, and we don't focus solely on this show about cannabis. Of course, we focus on essential extraction. And for those that have been listening from the beginning, this is kind of where we as a company got our start in the cannabis. But there's so many other things, right? There's so many other essential oils out there in our world right now. And so I'm happy to have you on. But can you explain to the listeners a little more in depth on, why you enjoy the science of extracting?
Well, a lot of the extraction happens no matter what you're doing for sample prep and the analytical chemistry. So extraction happens whether you're doing a blood plasma for peptides, or you're doing a pesticide work at the USDA, or you're doing mining for gold, or you're looking for ionic compounds of sodium or fluoride or whatever's in our water system. Each one of those is an extraction. You have to be able to do an extraction to be able to isolate the compounds you're looking for and then analyze them. And so when you move it to a larger scale where you're using that product in other means or other products, essential oils, which they call them EO. And so when you're doing that, each one of those parts of the business starts from the analytical side. So I've been doing it since 1972, once you really figure out what extraction is on a small scale. So if you've been drinking decaffeinated coffee, you're looking at extraction. If you've had nicotine cigarettes, that's an extraction. Each one of those is an extraction, as well as walking up and down the aisle with vanilla or DHEA or any of the fish oils. Those are all extraction based technology that's providing those products on our shelves.
Well, why? So let me ask you this: why have you chosen to focus solely on where you spend most of your time?
Well, I didn't spend most of my time with that before the late 2012. Before that time, I had no knowledge of cannabis. Maybe someone along the way might have showed it to me in college days or so, but as a research scientist and making analytical equipment, I had no interest in it. And I remember when it first came out, and I started to see that they were doing medical marijuana, applications. To be quite frank, I said, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. All these people want to do is get high." But I was in eastern side of the United States most of my life, not the western side of the United States, or even the Midwestern side of the United States. But as you looked at that, and I read more into it, reading some of Ethan Russo's work, Sanjay Gupta went out to Colorado and found that he also had the wrong opinion about how this could be working to the endocannabinoid system. I started reading Shula's work, who's another synthetic organic chemist. And as I went through that process, I realized that I also had a family member who died of epilepsy through a grand mal. And she had been on her life on phenobarbital, and it was a life really interrupted, because back then, if you had epilepsy and you were, having blinking eyes, and it was hard to concentrate, you were always having seizures. It's really hard to not be made fun of you're slow or you're this or you're that, and so that made it more personal. And so that's when I started digging into it, and I sort of backed into the industry rather than aggressively going into it. So I backed into it just on the fact of, as I looked at the extraction technology that was out there in 2012, it wasn't as research oriented. And so I was able to bring that scientific bearing and merged it in with the practical application applied scientists that were out there for generations that might have been in a cottage industry, for example.
Yeah.
So that's how I did it.
Extraction's been around for hundreds of years, basically. As when you look into the cannabis world, we kind of just think it's this new thing, right? This new thing, all of a sudden extraction just popped up out of the sky, and now we're extracting oil for cannabis. However, that is not the case. It's the furthest from the case. Why do people act like this is just something that it's a new technology? What do people not realize? Do they not study it? What do we find in the industry, or what are you finding why that's the case?
In the United States, I'll just put it to the United States, especially on the eastern side of the United States, we're not familiar with this as a plant that grows in such varieties and at such scale. And so you're also walking through our land of it was a bad drug and it has no value. And so you also had that through our heritage. And the cannabis plant, to be quite frank, back in the 1970s might have had 4 or 6% of cannabinoids, and now you've got plants that are up to 32. So I think there's two things that happen. Number one is we weren't aware of the plant and its potential medicinal value, and the second one is not to be quite blunt, but Americans tend to think that they've discovered the world, and we've only been here a few hundred years. And the Chinese have been in China for a lot longer than we've been in the United States, as well as the Egyptians, as well as everyone over in Afghanistan, that sort of side of the world, in India. This is not a new technology for them to be able to do that. I would also add on to that the science of medicine was called pharmacognosy. Pharmacognosy was the medicinal value that came out of plants. And then around the 1950s, probably somewhere in there, slowly but surely, those pharmacognosy PhDs, like Joe Soley is a pharmacognosist, ethnobotany. And so when you look at that, that was slowly transformed into pharmacies with small molecules because they're much more controlled. But many of those small molecules, Americans don't know that came from the natural product. And there's no one out there gnawing on bark just to get aspirin. And so when we see that, that's the part that moving it back towards the natural products. They call it traditional Chinese medicine. Well, it should be traditional China. It should be traditional medicine, and that's more of what it is. But we've aligned it as though it's an Eastern sort of thing versus a Western sort of we're a level 1 society, for example, where they would say that. But when you're in China, you're going to find shops that are making personalized medicine and have for not just hundreds of years, but tens of thousands of years.
Are these little shops, they're creating extraction, or they're taking plant material such as what we're talking about, and they're actually creating their own products and putting it on the shelves? Is that what you've seen?
It's actually personalized medicine. So it's much like you see some of the compounders. You still see them in some of the cities as you go around. You'll see pharmacies, but if you look in the yellow pages, which I believe the yellow pages is now in my hand, you go back through and you'll find compounders still making unique products, whether it's for the endocrine disruptors or whether it's for menopause or it's or other things like that. You're going to find specialized ones for your metabolism. In China, in some areas of China, the doctors only get paid when you're healthy. They don't get paid if you get sick, so they're responsible for keeping you healthy, not for taking care of your disease states.
That's a completely different mind shift. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Americans aren't going to build that in real soon.
No, that's I could agree with you on that.
They went to medical school not to keep an office. That's a lot of money.
But it is what a great thing to aspire towards, though. To eventually, if we could shift the mindset of creating a healthier community by paying people to be healthy.
It definitely is a mind shift. There's a great skit by not skit, but I don't know what you call it, with Bob Newhart, and he merges the spin around of Western medicine versus Eastern, and what do the Eastern medicine people learn from us? And it's quite entertaining if you Google up Bob Newhart and the traditional medicine. It's a good 5 minutes of good fun.
Our understanding that there are people that are such as yourselves starting to understand this more and more. Where do you think we see the future of extraction heading over the next 5-10 years?
Well, the first part was the encouraging part of being able to have the states legalize it. The second part that Dr. Jeff Raber and I were on, definitely on a war path as far as making sure that people knew that pesticides probably weren't a good thing, and everyone said, "Oh no, you don't have pesticides." And so, when you look at how far it's come from 2012, 2014, so there was this first stage of just the high THC products, and then you had a second surge of products in 2018 when the Farm Bill came into pass. So you're seeing that transition. The transition goes from making 4 or 5 cookies in your house doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be making, for example, Keebler cookies, and hundreds and thousands of these things. So what you're going to see is more automation, more real-time knowing what's happening inside that vessel, more regulations as far as not only ASME or FDA or USDA, but you're going to see OSHA. You're going to have other things that have to come into play that make sure that your employees are safe, but also that the product isn't out in the open. You're not going to have people around desks sniffing and making buds. You're not going to have people, loading, vessels with a scoop and a funnel. You're gonna have real production style from the time the plant comes in until it's in the ingredient forms that you want. It's never touched. It goes through the entire process and is monitored the entire way.
Yeah, I think it's hard, for those people out there that are listening now. I imagine it's challenging for them to wrap their heads around that, especially if they're in a, totally prohibition state, that doesn't allow medical or recreational at this point.
Then that's going to be less and less, but it's still, for example, some of the things that come from that are the people finding the loopholes, like Delta 8 it's a loophole. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that can happen post that still have to be taken care of.
Yeah, well, there's so much to learn about this, but also where do you get the right education, right? I mean, what type of platforms out there offer education on the extraction side? Are you aware of any?
It's like one of those big softballs that come in slow and there's no one in the outfield and you're trying to get a hit at the bottom of the ninth. So there are some really good platforms out there. I would say that Green Flower, for example, Max has put together a good program on the computer side and being able to look at videos, and some good people that put them together. I've helped put a couple of them together for them with multiple PhDs or multiple people that have a lot of personal experience with solvent and solventless. I would say, for example, I would say Mace Media, where they put together a lot of different platforms for that and tried to, really work towards not only the extraction side, but the medical side. I think that some of the magazines are and journals are doing a good job. There's some cannabis science cannabis journals out there that are focused on really looking at the science in a readable format. On my own side, I am starting up my own website for extraction research and for doing classes. So I'm going to be.
Yeah, you're creating a platform yourself too, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So you're setting this up. You're going to create some curriculum. I mean, how are you formatting the curriculum? Have you decided on how you're going to do that yet, or how far down the road are you?
Well, I got my first class on July 7th in Denver, so I better get it done pretty soon. I want to go back through. My teaching style is in between science guy and Bill Nye the Science Guy, a little bit of Robin Williams, a lot of bit of Bob Newhart, and then just pure Dr. Mishula science. And so on my side, I try and bring the extraction to everyday terms. And so for me, in my classes, you're going to be making coffee, and you're going to be looking at caffeinated versus decaffeinated. You're going to be looking at lavender. You're going to be looking at orange peels. You're going to be looking at it by CO2, by ethanol, by just grinding. There's a lot of different ways where you have not only the teaching, but for me, you have to, learning comes through listening, seeing, touching, doing, and having a vibrant discussion during a session. So that's how I'm really structuring for a 1 day, a 2 day, and a 3 day, that as you get deeper and deeper into it, how much do you want to get into it? But also, don't forget that you have the business side. And so you had to merge the business with the science. The other part that I see is that there's a difference between someone working for a large multi-state license and someone who's making a product for their mom or for their child that's, trying to make something that's ethical and safe because they have them under their care. So it goes from the person making their own coffee, drying and roasting their own coffee and then making their own, boutique coffee or teas or something like that, all the way through, outside of Starbucks, for gosh sakes. I mean, it's not as though they're in there growing them in the back and then bringing them out front. And so you have all those different processes. So my teaching philosophy is fun, hands-on. Science doesn't have to be bad. and making molecules so that you really see what this product is and looking at the ramifications as well as the positive side. But it's also everything. It's EO.
Yeah. So, going back to, you talked about the creating your own compounds for personal use for people in China, and they've been doing it for years. Do you see this as part of that education to create something like that? Or, I mean, you brought up lavender and everything else, but is this something like, who is this best suited for?
Someone breathing.
Okay. So everyone is basically,
if you can fog a mirror. I think one of the things that I believe is that no matter how you come into it as an expert or as a novice, merging those together and merging those people together it's a challenge for me, because now I'm making sure that I'm not leaving anyone behind and I'm not boring someone to death. And so you can segment that knowledge by starting with a surface, then going a little deeper, and then going a little deeper. And then most of the people I've seen will also see that there's a fun part to it, so that the people that are totally way beyond my intelligence by any stretch of the imagination, yet being able to say, oh, wow, I could bring that to my grandmother. And now I can explain to my grandmother what I'm doing by, 3 packs of colored chocolate candy. Mm-hmm. And that's how so now you can say, how do you bring the experts so that they can talk to people? Not everyone who's an expert can articulate it in a fun way, but at the same time, now you have someone who's learning from M&Ms going, oh, so that's the other compounds that are in there. So now you bring their level up and the other one down. But when you merge those people together and you bring them, coffee, tea, and some sort of pastry, they're going to talk to each other, and they're going to start to merge with each other and recognize that they feed off of each other and they can contribute to each other.
So if you have a level of interest in how botanical extraction works, that it doesn't matter what level you're at, is that what you're telling me?
I have positioned it so that it's got different levels, and so it really goes to each level and allows the analogies for the experts, and it allows the novice to see how it contributes in each part, whether it's the water content, why is that important? The size of the particles, why is that important? And then, so yes, it allows people to see every part of it. And that's my goal, is to merge classes, because I've taught chemistry to 300 students at one point in time. Yeah. And when you have a you look up there and you see 300 students and you're just going, these people are not all on the same level. And so now you have to make it, so you don't bore the students that really are more excelled, and you bring the other students up to an acceptable level. If they get to see when they came in going, first of all, there's no such atoms, I can't see them, so therefore they don't exist. And so that's really how I do it.
Great. So you're doing a 1, 2, and 3 day course.
Yeah.
What are some of the costs on these courses, just to?
Yeah. So I'm because I'm me, and because I can be me, I made the 1 day course $710.
Okay.
So for most people that know extraction, they smile, because if you put that upside down, it spells oil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I wouldn't have figured that out right away. That's for sure.
So that's why $710.
Well, and those of you that are out there, I mean, the extent of knowledge, what kind of time can they save with just 1 day course? What will that bring to them?
My goal is that when they go back to an industry, that the ROI should be less than 2 days, that they should recoup that $710 within 2 days. That's my goal. Because if they can learn 1 or 2 things that they come away with that change their process or allows them more productivity or less waste, then I've done what I needed to do to make them responsible and productivity, because no one's gonna spend $710 during this economy on a waste. They also have an opportunity that they can take a test or not, and so they can be certified or just say they attended. Either way, but because I came out of college teaching, there's no worse students in the world, I don't care what you do, than a pre-med student. Oh, they're impossible to teach because they're so brilliant.
Why is that? Oh, they're too smart.
They're too smart, but also they will battle for one more point. I should have gotten, a 91. I got a 90, just like, and they'll come in and battle. And typically this is what I did. So this is a small, I said, I'm welcome to look at your tests. If you'd like me to review your tests, I will again, but there's probably points that I probably gave you too many points on another section, but be sure and leave it here because you could probably get a 91 or you might get a 73. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll make you think of making you go work again, going through that time if they could potentially lose points.
If they can lose points, that's what it is. But I do test on the material itself, and I do go back through. So then I went back through and I look at that and I say, knowing the basics and then knowing how to apply it. So to get 100, you got to know how to apply it, not only in the science, but on the business side. So it's a merging of business and science. And on my side, I really drive towards formulation centric. You start at the end on the ingredients you're trying to make. You move it back towards where do I get those ingredients? And then you move it back towards how do I extract to be able to get those ingredients? And from there, you extract to what's the variety of the plant that's going to provide me those ingredients. And so you don't start with the beginning, you start at the end. And that's typically.
Yeah. I mean, just like so many goals in your life, right? Start with the end in mind. How am I going to, let's see where I want to get, and let's work backwards and figure out all the things that I need to make that happen. So John, when is this course in Denver? When are you?
It's the 7th and 8th in Denver. Of
July.
July. And then
where's it at? Do you have a place for you?
The Gaylord.
Oh, okay. So you're at the Gaylord. Great. And what is the name
Marriott
of the
guy?
Okay. What's the name of the courses that you're doing? Do you have a name for it?
Yeah, it's cleverly enough extraction.
Just the extraction courses?
Principles and practices of extraction.
Okay, great. And I know we're going to put something in the link here for people to find it, but what's your website so people can reach out to you there if they're interested?
So it's synergistictechassociates.com.
Synergistictechassociates.com. Okay.
I try to make it as long as possible to make sure that
that's okay. It'll
have to work to get there.
It'll be in the blog post. So people, if they're interested, they can go to extractionessentials.com, click on there. Really easy. John, really cool stuff that you have coming out. I'd really be interested in having you on again in the future to discuss how things are going and stuff you're seeing with some of your students, because I know you've been teaching for a long time, and most teachers say, I assume you're probably the one as well. You learn as much from your students as they learn from you, and I'm sure that's the case.
Very much.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. If you guys are listening to our podcast at all, you're obviously interested in extraction. So John is an amazing teacher. So please look him up. He has an extensive knowledge. He also, like you said before, if you guys are against cannabis, totally fine. Don't let that draw you away from him. That's just what brought him over to, exploring some new compounds and understanding that. So I'm sure he's learned an extensive amount, but also if you are interested in cannabis, of course, this is the guy to talk to about extraction. So John, thanks so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Guys, again, if you are, you're welcome. You're welcome. If you guys are enjoying listening to what we're bringing here today, please hit the subscribe button or like us. We appreciate that. And check out all the rest of our episodes. We've got another 20-something episodes right now that are explaining all kinds of different ways we extract. So come check it out at extractionessentials.com and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next week.
You have just listened to another informative episode of Extraction Essentials with Tony Frischknecht. We invite you to come back next time as we strive to provide useful knowledge and tools every week to help you on your extraction business. You can also visit extractionessentials.com for additional resources and to know more about working with Tony. See you again next time.